Hey everybody, Eric Grenier here with Philippe J. Fournier for this week's episode of The Numbers. Philippe, last week was the first week of the first episode of the year.
Yeah.
We had some stuff to talk about, and then, a lot of stuff has happened actually in the last week. Now, a lot of it was at the provincial scene, and that, of course, since that is where some of your bread and butter comes from, you were very busy over the last week, but how have you been over this last week?
This was comparable to the height of a federal election for me.
Wow.
So on Wednesday morning, François Legault resigned. We'll get to that at some point in this episode. But the short story is I went to Radio-Canada at 7:30 in the morning to talk about a new Quebec poll that shows François Legault and the CAQ not doing so well. And so I did the TV hit, and then I do a pre-tape for radio. And just as I'm about to leave, I'm putting on my coat and getting ready to move on with my day. Everything starts buzzing in the Radio-Canada and CBC building. And I was like, what's going on here? And then the news, François Legault is going to resign. And so I have producers grabbing me by the coat. Says, no, you stay here. Go to makeup. And so I did shows English and French all day till 9 o'clock in the evening. So it was quite insane. Monsieur Legault is gone. We'll get to those Quebec numbers a bit later. But I think, Eric, I'm looking at our little outline here. We have many federal polls, which is the first this year. It seems like many pollsters were just taking a little break, and good for them. But they are back at work. And there's kind of a theme in these early 2026 polls, isn't there? Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I think we're going to start with those federal numbers. Now, we've had polls over the last week that have been published now it seems like every week now we're going to be getting a nanos and a liaison. So that is now a little bit of a baseline we can have to discuss every week. We're going to have some numbers. But we also got just this morning some new polling numbers from Palace Data, and we got some from Abacus Data over the last little while.
Yeah, Sunday.
The top lines are all almost identical, right? We got 40... I should say we're almost all identical, but...
Almost, yeah.
So we have Abacus Data that has 40% for the Liberals, 40% for the Conservatives, 8% for the NDP. No real change since December. It actually has all the parties down a point. We had Liaison, Liberal 40, Conservative 35, and NDP 11. We have Palace, Liberal 40, Conservative 37, NDP 11, and Nanos, Liberal 39, 35 Conservative, and 11.5 for the NDP. So we got, in most of these polls... Well, in three of these polls, we got a 3 to 5 point lead for the Liberals. Yep. In Abacus, we have a tie, which we've seen pretty consistently from them. Yep. So we do have this theme here, but there was a bit of a big number change in the Abacus data poll that caught my attention. And I think that might be where we start, because you're going to be going off to Calgary.
That's right, next week.
In a little over a week.
Yep.
And that'll be for the Conservative Convention. Where Pierre Poilievre is going to be facing that leadership review vote. It's not that... These numbers aren't bad for Poilievre, I guess, when you're looking at the fact that they're at 35 to 40%. But there's some personal numbers there that I think are kind of problematic for him.
The Conservative numbers are not bad at all. They're well within range. As you said, Abacus has a tie. They had a tie before the New Year, so no change. And the other have a small Liberal lead. But... the Poilievre numbers is what really caught my eye, right? And so, if we look at these numbers, I have them right here. And so, Abacus Data has this tracker where they ask about negative and positive impressions, and it's every pollster of sort, major pollsters, they have one version of this tracking. They ask, do you have an unfavorable view, a favorable view, a negative impression? Do you approve? So there's many wordings to these questions. And so they have different results. And in Abacus data, the results for the leaders, for Monsieur Poilievre, the numbers have been consistent over the past, 2 years, basically. When you look at the lines, they just, just a little noise. Mm-hmm. And for many months, Monsieur Poilievre has been in the low negative net rating, like single digit, -3, -5, -2, -7. And suddenly, his negatives are up 5 points. His positive impressions are down 4 points, and so he's at a minus 13 negative rating right now. Net rating right now. And this is the worst from Abacus data since I think they started tracking on Monsieur Poilievre in 2022. This could be a blip. When we see a big change, a big sudden change in polling, it's often just a blip and it reverts back to the mean. But in the past month, many events have happened. And I think stability, world stability, has been shaken. And don't you have the same vibes as last year, 1 year ago, when Mr. Trump returned to the White House and you had the conservatives losing their lead to the leaderless liberals? It feels like this could be real, or it maybe is Abacus reverting to what other pollsters have had. I know Liaison and Léger and the Angus Street Institute all have like bad numbers, personal numbers for Pierre Poilievre. So I'm not sure what to make of this, but it is a sudden move for a tracker that's been incredibly stable over many months. Eric, how do you read those numbers?
Yeah, it's as you said, a 5-point jump for the negatives, which is, and it really stands out in the chart, right? That it is a big spike in the negatives for Pierre Poilievre and his worst numbers. One of the things that differentiates Abacus from some of the other polls is that they have a neutral, which I think takes up a big chunk of kind of those people who don't really have strong views either way. When other pollsters, when they force you to say approve, disapprove, favorable, unfavorable, you have to choose one. So I think that is probably why, especially with like Angus Reid Institute, for example, we see some pretty high negatives for Pierre Poilievre, because there's probably a big chunk of people who would otherwise say, I don't feel that strongly either way, who go on the negative side when they're forced to make a choice. But here to see Poilievre at 48% negative, the highest it's been, and in the context of the Conservative Party not really seeing its numbers move, they were still at 40%, down 1 point. So this is very much driven by views of Pierre Poilievre, right? It's not that their sample was not very conservative friendly or anything like that, because they got as many conservatives as they usually do. They just had worse numbers for Pierre Poilievre. And the same poll had Mark Carney's numbers steady. If anything, they were a little bit better than they've been over the last few weeks or months. 46% positive, 33% negative. And this isn't the only poll where we're seeing these kinds of numbers.
No.
In our over-unders, one of the things that we did was when would be the last time we saw Mark Carney's numbers over 50%?
In the preferred PM rating.
In the best prime minister numbers from Nanos.
Yeah.
And this is the first poll of the year that has him back over 50%. He's at 51%. But Poilievre is down again. He's down to 25, which is among the lower numbers he's had. You see in the liaison that the Conservatives have been losing a little steam over the last little while. So there are some multiple indicators here that maybe Pierre Poilievre is in some trouble, that in the current context.
Yeah.
And I think you're hitting on something that's pretty interesting. I think that with the increase in anxiety about what's happening south of the border, Donald Trump tweeting this morning or whatever it is on his thing with all of North America with an American flag on it. Yeah. When that happens, I think it does exacerbate that contrast between Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, and Pierre Poilievre's numbers tend to get a little bit worse. And the real question is going to be, is this, as you said, is this just a blip, or is this actually a big sign of it's not going to be an easy few months for the Conservative leader?
No, it isn't. We'll get to the leadership review because I'm not sure like they are necessarily related. But just to express, because maybe I expressed myself wrong, like how stable Abacus's tracking was. Here are the negative impressions for Pierre Poilievre since August, according to Abacus. Ready? 42, 42, 41, 42, 42, 42, 44, 42, 43, and now 48. So again, this could be a bad sample, but the voting intentions did not move. So this tells me that, there was a little erosion. And in the positive side, 40, 39, 40, 40, 39, 39, 37, 39, 39, 35. So there's this little chunk that Poilievre perhaps has either anger or disappointed in the past month or month and a half, that's just, opening up. And Mr. Carney is at plus 13 in net favorability, according to Abacus. You don't win a general elections. If you're tied and you have a leader that's popular among all the parties except the Conservatives, and you have the other leader who's only popular with conservatives, this is a hurdle, a major hurdle for the conservatives. Now, Eric, the leadership review. These are delegates from the riding associations, chosen by members, or like they look at these numbers like, oh, Poilievre lost 4 points in favorability and 5 points up 5 points in unfavorability. Do they really look at that and say, perhaps we shouldn't stick with Poilievre? I'm not sure you can draw a straight line from point A to point B here, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. And I don't think his score is on January 30th or 31st or whenever the vote's going to take place. I don't think his score is going to change all that much in the next few weeks, right? Because as you said, these are delegates who have probably already decided how they're going to vote before they get there.
You would think so, yeah.
I mean, maybe you shave off a few more. Who knows? Maybe there'll be some floor crossers again the next week or something. We don't know yet. But
forgot about that. Yeah.
I really wonder about where the line is, because to me, if you get under 85, that's not great. It doesn't mean you have to resign or anything, but it's not a good score. I see some people saying like, oh, well, if he gets over 70 or 80, then, that's fine. Oof. It's fine, I guess, but it's not a good score. Like, you look at some of the past leaders, the Conservatives and other parties, when they're well liked by their members, they get 90 plus, even if they're not forming government, even if they're an opposition leader. If as Poilievre has made the case, which I think is a completely legitimate case, more seats, as I think is the biggest opposition ever, more votes that the Conservatives ever gotten since 1988. Increases in lots of different places, representation in almost every province, I think. I think the only one is not PI, although now not Nova Scotia. Yeah. But that if those numbers are as good as they should be, like when you think about an opposition leader, he should get a 90 plus, or at least an 85 plus. If he is in the 70s, I don't think that's actually a good result.
No.
When you're someone who won your leadership with such a resounding victory, 600,000 people signed up to vote in that leadership race.
Huge.
It's huge. And a lot of the people who would have not supported him, I doubt, are still members. I don't think there's some Jean Charest truthers that are sticking around in the party. Yeah. So I do feel like the bar should be a lot higher than it seems like some commentators are making it. Abacus asked if you could vote on keeping your leader, getting rid of your leader, and it was of current supporters, not 2025 voters. For Mark Carney among Liberals, 90% said they would keep him, 5% said they would dump him. That, to me, is the kind of normal number that you should get when you just won an election, if it went to the members. But Poilievre got 72 who would keep him and 18 who would dump him.
Yeah.
Like it's not awful. It's not you have to resign or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it's not a glittering number.
It's not great. It's not great. I think is this maybe changes my priors. I have to be careful here because so before Christmas, when we talked about our predictions, our forced predictions for 2026, I think I said, Poilievre's going to get 90 plus in this leadership review. Like, this was a forced prediction. I still think it should be the case because many conservatives just love the guy. But there are many factions of this party, and not all of them are happy right now. So will the delegates reflect this? I have a feeling that he's still fine. But perhaps we have one more poll next week before his leadership review. Abacus sometimes, they do publish sometimes on consecutive weeks. And if we see those numbers revert back, that means we were just discussing noise. It doesn't change the fundamental issue that Poilievre is more polarizing than his main opponent is. But and if next week those numbers have even worsened, let's say he goes to 51 negative and 32 positive, then what? Like, you see stable numbers straight for 8 months since the election, and then just before the leadership review, you see them taking a dive. That's not a good sign. So That's going to be a very interesting vote. I can see many scenarios unfolding. I wish we had like numbers on this. I guess this is the best we can have, right? Conservative supporters, do you want to keep him? Like 72-18 and 10 undecided. Is that what it is? Yeah, it is. That's good. It's not great, but those aren't the delegates. So no. I don't know. Interesting.
Well, when you said, you still think he'll be fine, I want to make it clear. I would be shocked if he gets a leadership review vote that results in his resignation next week or a week and a half.
Okay,
I do not think that's going to happen. But I just mean in terms of, is it a good enough number that you can kind of put the critics to bed?
So for reference here, I'm just having fun with you here. What did Jagmeet Singh get in Hamilton? Wasn't it 81%? I think it was 81%.
Something like that.
His last leadership review. And we remember, I think you and I said, okay, this is acceptable. It's not great. It's acceptable. And then he got destroyed in the election. 81. So if I put the new bar, not an over-under, but if I put the bar at 81, if Poilievre gets 81, that would be underwhelming, wouldn't it? I expect, it would be.
I mean, think about the context there. Maybe he'll get 91. But if you do set the bar at 81 for Jagmeet Singh, and this was in, I think, 2023 or...
24.
24, yes, something like that, right?
Yeah, fall 24.
So this is a time when the NDP is not really doing that well.
No.
Singh's numbers aren't that really great. There's not a real sign that the party loves him or that kind of thing, or that the members love him or all that kind of stuff. So if Poilievre was not able to beat Singh's number...
That line.
It would not make sense based on what we think the party thinks of him, right? So that's why I feel like if we see a number that starts with a 7, I'm not saying that he has to resign or anything like that. I'm just saying that
would be bad.
I don't think it goes away. I don't think his leadership kind of questions go away. I don't think it makes his MPs and his caucus feel like they really need to stick around. If he gets a 90 plus, then I think that a lot of people will be like, look, the party loves him. And he's not going anywhere. So, if you're a conservative, maybe you don't want to ruin your career. You want to stick around.
Yeah.
In the 80s, it's in that, who knows. But I think the scale, the curve is not the same as, a Merit Stiles for the Ontario NDP or a John Rustad in the Conservatives in BC. I think there are some numbers that I think he should be able to meet. Now, we discussed... when it was the Battle River Crowfoot by-election, whether he would put up a number that was respectable and all this kind of stuff. Yep. And he ended up, I think, beating a bit of our expectations.
Yeah.
So I don't think that... So I don't think we should assume that he's going to get a bad number. As we said, I still think he could get a very good number. But I do think that I don't think it's not a pass-fail. It's not as simple as that.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not a switch, it's a dial. Yeah, exactly. But just for the record, I still think him getting 90 plus is far more likely than him getting below 80. It's just that those new numbers make me pause. Like a scientist, when you have new data, you have to reconsider your priors. If we have polls just before the convention, and you would have to think some pollsters know that there's a leadership review next week, right? And so we have less data. If the numbers keep getting worse, will you have some delegates that get cold feet? I don't know. Is that the right expression, cold feet? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So anyway. But also,
it will be Calgary in the end of January. I'm sure there will be some cold feet. But.
The government approval in Abacus was also steady. And when I look at the numbers, again, from Abacus, if I from late fall in November, 48, 47, 47, and now 47. So that's stable. A disapproval, 32, 33, 35, 34. Everything in this poll was stable, except Poilievre's personal numbers.
Yeah,
this is why
they stand out.
Yeah, they stand out. I mean, you and I are very careful not to just overanalyze noise. This just doesn't feel like it is noise when you look at the overall picture. But anyway.
There's certain numbers that we would see, and particularly from certain pollsters that tend to have a bit more swingy numbers that we'd be like, okay, let's not jump overboard. But this is...
Abacus isn't one. Yeah.
No, I think this is something at least to watch. It's not just a thing that I think that can be easily brushed off, particularly when we do see from the other pollsters that came out this week that the numbers for the Conservatives weren't up. They weren't. So it doesn't. It's not like this stands out in that sense. I do find it interesting. I just want to mention. You look at some of the regional numbers in this one.
Yeah.
Liaison had a 11-point lead for the Liberals in Ontario. Palace has them 9 points ahead in Quebec. So there's some polls that are showing them in a bit of better position. Abacus had them a lot closer. When I ran them through a bit more of a simple model, Liaison produces Liberal majority.
Yeah.
Abacus produced, I think, a conservative tiny minority.
Yep.
So it is running the gamut of all these things. But I think overall, when you look at all these polls together, it doesn't change what we said last week, that I don't think the Liberals would have a slam dunk for getting a majority. No. But I probably think that there are 2-to-1 odds, at least, that they would win the most seats.
What do you make, Eric, of the NDP now regularly getting double digits in support? Abacus had them at 8, but most of the polling we see right now is 10, 11, 12. This is a change from last fall, where only Nanos Research, I ran the numbers, basically only Nanos Research had them regularly in double digits. Is the NDP making a slight comeback, or is that soft support park votes that used to be Liberal mostly, and now they're looking eagerly with the NDP leadership race? What do you see in the NDP numbers?
I think that they increase the odds that it would produce a minority of some kind, but I think that if you're a conservative, you would look at the fact that the NDP is up, 5 points. And they're not any closer to beating the Liberals. I think that would be the issue, because the gap between the Conservatives and Liberals was 2.5 points or something like that last time.
That's right.
On average, the gap here on these polls is more than 2.5 points, and the NDP's up. So it doesn't mean that. So it's not that a lot of New Democrats who lent their vote for the Liberals are taking it back. It's that some of them who lent it to the Conservatives, some of them who lent it to the Liberals have taken it back. So it doesn't look like it's coming from one party or one direction. And I think for the Conservatives, that's a problem, because they really need the NDP to be starting to get some of their progressive vote back. Yeah. And so far, that doesn't seem like it's necessarily that vote that's coming back.
You mentioned already the Nanos Research Prefer PM tracker, but let's just say the numbers. So this morning, since Christmas, the last 4 weeks, 51% choose Mark Carney, 25% choose Pierre Poilievre, compared to the previous 4-week wave. Carney was at 46, so now at 51, so up 5 points. Poilievre was at 29, now at 25, so down 4 points. So those numbers are kind of consistent with what we see from Abacus. Makes me think that maybe, yes, there's a fraction of the electorate that's been turned off by recent events, especially regarding Poilievre. But we'll see. We know those numbers fluctuate. It's just that we've seen unusual movement early this year, and sometimes we want to have this cause and effect between world events or Canadian events and the numbers. It's not a straight line most of the time, but maybe here there's some correlation. So we'll see in future weeks.
When we chat next week, Parliament will have returned.
Yep, that's right.
Stuff might be going on, so we'll have lots to talk about next week in the sense. All right, let's get to Quebec. François Legault. It came out of the blue a little bit, which I thought was what was really interesting, right? I think it was around 9 o'clock in the morning. The news came out that François Legault was going to have an announcement at 11. And at first, no one knew exactly what it was. Maybe you can tell me what people were hearing in the newsroom. I've been in a newsroom on those days when something's happened. Oh, the energy is just incredible. It's just, it is a lot of fun. But he decides that, seeing the writing on the wall, all the reporting that I've read suggests that this was a decision that was largely made over the Christmas break, and it was started to set into motion last Monday. And then you came out with the poll, I think, on Tuesday, which more or less twisted the knife, and then François Legault resigns. We don't have the date yet for the leadership race to replace him.
No,
expecting it to be in April-ish. We should get that information soon. But how did we get here?
Okay, so if I just showed you a list of polls, chronological polls, and say, okay, this party is in power with an election in 2026, You don't see the colors, you don't see the party names, you just look at the numbers, you go down the list, it's like, oh man, this party is cooked and has been for a while, right? But then you put in the human element, right? So the reporting, a lot of it was done by Véronique Prince of Radio-Canada, great reporter. And she basically confirmed that Legault considered quitting last summer. And with his team, he basically stated, do we have a shot of reverting the numbers during the fall? And, they had some polling done, and some internal poll says, okay, and Legault figured, okay, I'm going to give it one last shot, one last go this fall. I'm going to get everything. He tried to have a fight with the doctors. He talked about immigration. He talked about all the favorite hits of the CAQ for the past decade. And nothing worked, basically. Over the holidays, he pondered again the last interviews he gave just before Christmas he was adamant that he's not leaving. He was going to fight. And you saw all those Rocky Balboa theme. The last convention he had, I think it was in November, he came out for his speech under Eye of the Tiger, right? He was ready to fight. But what we've learned since last Wednesday is that the CAQ had, some internal polls that basically said the same thing as that Palace poll, which I'll get to now. So, Parti Québécois, 34%, roughly stable. Liberals, leaderless Liberals, post Pablo Rodriguez, 24%, mostly stable. Conservatives, 16%, mostly stable. And then CAQ at 11%, tied with Québec solidaire. 11% is no seats for the CAQ. It's a wipeout. The party disappears. And favorables, unfavorables. 12% favorable for M. Legault. 75% unfavorable for a net minus 63. You see this and you go like, okay, I'm going to get humiliated. My party will be destroyed. There will be nothing left. So Legault figured, okay, it's time to go now. That's the whole thing, basically. By the way, a comment I received many times that day and the next day, a crazy week we had in Quebec, was that les sondages ont eu raison de M. Legault. Like, the polls kill M. Legault. And I just want to say that, that hockey game that the Habs lost the other night, I think it was because of the score.
Yeah, the score.
If you forget the score, the Habs did great. Like, okay, this is what it means. We polls measure the score of the game. So with some
It was
uncertainty.
public opinion. It was what Quebecers thought that did it.
Exactly.
I always hate this notion that the polls exist outside of reality. Don't listen to the polls. The polls don't decide elections. No, the voters do, and they're the ones being polled.
Yeah.
I
know.
Oh my God,
I know. But I heard it many times. Like, the polls did it in. It's like,
it was the revelation of what the polls showed that did it. Well, it wasn't the polls themselves. They weren't just numbers pulled out of thin air.
Small parentheses here. You hear fans on, the polls are just propaganda. They're just trying to sway public opinion. If you hear a politician, and a serious politician, say that, he's lying to you. Because if he doesn't believe in the polls, that means he has no business running a state or province or a city or whatever, because they don't believe numbers and science. Like they know. The CQ polled. They checked, and they go like, holy crap, like, we're not doing well here. Anyway, so enough of that. But the PQ is still in majority territory, doing well from that poll. One thing that stands out is that 5 leaders were polled. Charles Billiard is not the leader of the Quebec Liberals yet, but he should become the leader next month. We'll see. All of them have net negative favorables. Even M. Plamondon. M. Plamondon has the best numbers of that lot. Like he's doing better than the others, but his favorables are net negative as well. So, And then the question becomes, Eric, how does this shake up the election?
Exactly. What's next?
So what do you think of? I mean, okay, so I talked a lot here. What about you? What did you read in the numbers, and what happened last week in Quebec?
Well, I mean, it was inevitable. It seemed like the only thing that Legault could do to really try to shake things up, and that reporting does make sense when we saw everything that was happening last fall. The Constitution, the Bill 2. It was just it just seemed like he had a couple cards left in his hand, and he was like, "The hell with it. Let's just put him down and see what happens." Because otherwise, like I remember thinking, like, "Geez, like this is a lot of stuff to bring up in your last year.
Yeah.
You've been in for 7 years already, and okay, now you're going to do all this kind of stuff that is like early mandate kind of stuff."
Yeah.
So it does kind of put that context in that they were trying anything. In the end, I think it's probably not going to have helped, but this is now an opportunity for the next leader of the CAQ to try to do a bit of a reset. You said that all the leaders are unpopular. I think that is well, I wouldn't say unpopular. They're all negative. They all have more people dislike them than like them.
Yeah.
I think that is a huge factor here because we never really knew for certain, and we still don't really know, if the PQs gain in the polls, the PQs leading in the polls.
I know.
Is it pro PQ? Is it anti CAQ? I think that there is a lot of reason to believe that a lot of that support for the PQ isn't exactly all that enthusiastic, because we see that even among their supporters, support for sovereignty is usually 70 to 80%. It's not 100%.
No.
So there's a chunk of voters there that probably don't want to see a referendum, aren't all that keen on independence, but given the options, they're the only ones that they can consider as a palatable party they could vote for that they would like to actually see in government. But if the CQ now has a new leader, it gives them a bit of a reset, there could be a lot of movement. And I do wonder if, I do think that things generally revert to where they are. That's usually kind of the baseline. But I do think there is a huge opportunity here for the CQ, not to win the election. I think that'll be too difficult, but to make a minority government likely, to split the vote enough that maybe even the PQ doesn't win, for the CQ to win enough seats that it survives as a party. I think these are all things that are on the table. And so the next leader of the party will be premier for 5-6 months, but they could end up being the opposition leader, or the leader of an opposition party.
Yeah.
That survives into the longer term.
The next leader of the CAQ will never admit it publicly, but his or her goal should be just to survive the next election. Like, you will most likely lose. There could be major movements. We saw that at the federal level last year, we know. But most likely you will lose. The important thing would be to survive, just not get completely wiped out. If the CAQ wins 10 seats, you know what? They'll be fine. They'll rebuild, and they could go back to power in a few years or decades maybe. But if they get wiped out, that's over. Like, they don't come back. You don't come back from a wipeout. From the same poll, Eric, because related to your point, I'm sorry, I was just looking at the numbers here. So 2 questions from the Palos poll. First is classic question: if there was a referendum on Quebec sovereignty, how would you vote? And then the other question, which I think is interesting because it goes a little more detailed, it's PQ leader Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon has said that if the PQ wins the election, they will hold a referendum in the first mandate. Are you favorable or unfavorable to this idea? Very unfavorable, 62. Favorable, 32. And when you look at the granular data, the very unfavorable is 46%. The very favorable, those who really want a referendum, 17%. So it's not even close. It's really not even close. And I know a lot of sovereigntists will go like, yeah, but this will change in a campaign. It could, but you don't start from a position of strength. Also, we asked a question after the referendum question. We asked, is your vote on sovereignty, is your current position on sovereignty final and decided, or can you still change your mind? And this is interesting. Because those who say no and I will not change my mind, 44. Those who say yes and I will not change my mind, 30. And then there's 26% up for grabs. You realize how much, like, the yes side would have to wipe the floor with those people who are only leaning or undecideds. You have a lot to change, a lot of minds, and not just undecideds to win this, or even to make it close. So I think this is why it's so interesting that the Parti Québécois is kind of stuck with this promise. If you speak to them, you look them in their eyes, they will tell you, we will do it and we will win this. It's just that you start down in the second period, and it's going to be a very steep hill. This could change the game in the election. If they make a good case and you see those sovereignty numbers close up and get to, I don't know, in the 40 to 50 range for the yes side, okay, that seems that the PQ is probably heading to an easy victory. But if you see that the yes side still around 35, that's a ceiling. That's a complete ceiling for the yes side. So very interesting stuff. Go check it out. It's on the Walrus right now. I released this morning.
I think that is really the wild card, is that the referendum is not something that is really all that popular. It's popular among the people who really want one. Yeah. And if the vote is divided enough, that's fine. Like, the PQ would still be able to win. But I do think that is a bit of a problem. And it does provide an opportunity for the CAQ, because the CAQ has a lot of the same kind of positions as the PQ on a lot of stuff, with the exception of independence, right? So if you like defending the French language and identity issues, the CAQ is still there. If the biggest obstacle you had was that it was François Legault and you're tired of him, maybe now you can move over. Maybe the replacement will be even more disliked, and the CAQ will drop into single digits. But there is at least that opportunity that I don't think existed there before. We already have a few names that seem to be likely to run. Simon Jolin Barrette, who has been one of the leaders on the identity file, seems to be one of the front runners. Christine Fréchette, who is the economy minister, she seems to be more of a, I don't know if it's more of a economy focus, kind of, if the party wants to go that direction. Interestingly, we saw Geneviève Guilbeault and Sonia Lebel both say they're not only not going to run, they're not going to run in the next election. Lebel was one of those MNAs I could have seen survive a wave against the CAQ just based on her own popularity. Those are two big losses for the party. I imagine they were intending on resigning anyway, but they had to kind of speed up their announcement of it because of all the speculation about their leadership. But we'll see who ends up taking over, and I do think it will decide what direction the CAQ does. If they go with someone like Jolin Barrette or maybe Bernard Drainville, who seems interested again. It could be more of an identity kind of focus, nationalism. If it's a Christine Fréchette, it could be more of a governing economy kind of focus. But that I'm really interested to see this, because this party's never had a leadership race before, and we don't really know what the members, what makes them tick. Well,
not only that, but we don't know the members, period. Like, the CAQ is not a period, is not a party that has asked its members what they think a lot. But just to go back to Bernard Drainville for 1 second here, you just inspire me to do a quiz on this. So, politicians who ran for party leadership of multiple parties, because Bernard Drainville ran for the PQ leadership and lost. And so if he does run for the CAQ,
he dropped out.
Yeah, he dropped out when he saw. Yeah, he dropped out when he saw the writing on the wall. But still, he still was in the race. But okay, I'll get a quiz at some point on that.
All right. One last word on Ontario.
Don't go to sleep, people.
We had another poll from Abacus. 48% for the PCs, 22% for the Liberals, 19% for the NDP, 6% for the Greens. Ford's government approval, 41% to 35% disapproval. One of the better polls we've seen for the PCs lately, one of the worst ones for the Liberals, who just decided that John Fraser, third time's a charm for John Fraser, going to be the interim leader again. He's going to get his card stamped, another interim leadership. You look at like the Abacus poll, there's lots of reasons to see weaknesses for the Ford PCs. That they don't get great marks on a lot of different issues. But they're still dominating, absolutely dominating. Have a 26-point lead, half the vote, and it's a premier who's not extremely popular.
No.
The government's approval is not extremely positive, and they still just continue to cruise along. He looks unbeatable. We said the same thing about François Legault.
Yeah, but we said it at the same time. And François Legault has spent the last 3 years down in the polls, and has Doug Ford even been in danger at any point after the pandemic. I don't remember any point where it was in danger. So, but so something you just said, I'm pulling all the Abacus data poll in Ontario. They do monthly, so since June for the PCs, it's 50, 53, 52, 51, 51, 48. So maybe a little dip, but nothing like that changes outside of the margin of error. What's interesting is that the Liberals were in the high 20s, and now they're in the low 20s, whereas we had Abacus data this fall that had the ONDP at 12%, now they're at 10%. So basically, it looks like this movement is between the Liberals and the NDP, while the PCs just seem, again, as you said, invincible. But so no movement, Ford majority, for Dynasty. I don't know what it'll take for that to turn, unless Monsieur Ford decides to go for the federal leadership. But we'll get that at some point. So.
And notable that we've seen stories that Steve Outhouse, the new campaign director for the Conservatives, leading some outreach to try to build back some of those bridges with the Doug Ford PCs and the Tim Houston PC. So maybe a recognition that maybe you don't want to.
No. You
don't want to be punching up, I guess,
no.
At people who tend to be more popular than you. All right, a number of the week. How about I go first?
Go first.
So mine is plus 20. This was the Liberal lead, or 20 points, in the Abacus data poll among voters 60 and over. 20-point lead. Now, the Conservatives had a 23-point lead for those 29 and younger, which we know do not vote as much. But for the Liberals to have that 20-point lead among the 60-plus, Pierre Poilievre's numbers were particularly bad among that cohort. I think you see here that reflection, that notion of stability, concern, anxiety, and all this kind of stuff is getting a lot of older voters to go to Mark Carney versus Pierre Poilievre. And it's hard to imagine, if we're looking at polling over the last decade, you would normally see the Conservatives doing quite well among older voters. And now they're down by 20 points, at least in this poll. Liaison had a 13-point lead for the Liberals among 65 plus, so it's not always the same. But anyway, I just thought it was notable result there.
Interesting. My number of the week is from this latest Palace data poll that was released this morning. How concerned are you that the next federal election could be influenced by fake AI content? 72% concerned, 17% not concerned. So I think many voters have paid attention to this. We see on social media a ton of fake content, especially coming from outside, not just Canadian stuff, but from the outside. And when you look at the crosstabs, Conservatives are a bit less concerned than the average, but it's a majority of concerned voters across the aisle, from all parties. And so, in all generations. And so, this is a very important issue, how we will be able to trust what we see in the news and social media, even though we know there's a lot of noise, a lot of garbage. And more, I think a lot of people are concerned about this. So I will be breaking down this poll this morning that was released. This data is quite interesting. So check it out, Palace Data.
All right. And we are not AI. And I know that an AI would say that, but we're not. Just trust us on that. All right. Well, that'll be it for this week. If you want to support the podcast, you can go to thenumberspod.ca. You get early access, ad-free access to the Discord. And we are going to have a bonus episode later on this week. So if you want to listen to that and get access to everything, thenumberspod.ca. Philippe, have a good week. I know that it was a big week for you last week. It'll calm down a little bit this week, I'm sure. I don't want to jinx it, but anyway, have a good week, Philippe. We'll talk again soon.
Merci beaucoup, Eric. Merci beaucoup, tout le monde. Have a great week.